Hello and welcome to Mcasts. This is Dr. Mark Miravalle, Professor of Theology and Mariology at the Franciscan University of Steubenville. I want to talk Fatima with you, and we can't in a segment really do proper justice to the Fatima message, but of course Pope Benedict the 16th, May 13th, 2010, Fatima visit, significant, profound, focusing for all of us. The Pope goes to Fatima for a reason, and if anybody would have that clear sense of the urgency of the Blessed Mother in our day, it would be a vicar of Christ under crisis, a vicar of Christ battling so many unjust attacks. So surely the blessing that Pope Benedict receives at Fatima, profound and relevant to today. Now, I want to talk about the third secret of Fatima. As most of you know, on July 13th, 1917, Our Lady revealed to the three Portuguese children what have since been called three secrets. And the first had to do with the vision of hell, and the second, the various elements of chastisement that would take place, and its remedy in a real sense with instituting devotion to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. But there was a third part of the secret of Fatima that was not revealed until 2000 at the specific direction of John Paul II. Now let me just read to you the portion, the third part of that July 13th, 1917 message, which was released in June of 2000. And then let's say a few words about commentary. This is what Our Lady said to Sister Lucia and her depiction of it. Quote, "After the two parts, which I have already explained, at the left of Our Lady and a little above, we saw an angel with a flaming sword in his left hand. Flashing, it gave out flames that looked as though they would set the world on fire. But they died out in contact with the splendor that Our Lady radiated towards him from her right hand. Pointing to the earth with his right hand, the angel cried out in a loud voice, 'Penance, penance, penance.' And we saw in an immense light that is God, something similar to how people appear in a mirror when they pass in front of it, a bishop dressed in white. We had the impression that it was the Holy Father. Other bishops, priests, men and women religious, going up a steep mountain, at the top of which there was a big cross of rough-hewn trunks, as of a cork tree with the bark. Before reaching there, the Holy Father passed through a big city half in ruins and half trembling with halting step. Afflicted with pain and sorrow, he prayed for the souls of the corpses he met on his way. Having reached the top of the mountain, on his knees at the foot of the big cross, he was killed by a group of soldiers who fired bullets and arrows at him. And in the same way there died one after another the other bishops, priests, men and women religious, and various lay people of different ranks and positions. Beneath the two arms of the cross there were two angels, each with a crystal aspersorium in his hand, in which they gathered up the blood of the martyrs, and with it sprinkled the souls that were making their way to God." Okay, that's the third part of the secret of Fatima, originally revealed July 13th, 1917. Now, how do we make sense of that? How do you interpret that? Well, Cardinal Ratzinger, when he released this message, this part of the secret, said very specifically at the news conference, there's no official translation or commentary, properly said, of this portion of the secret of Fatima. So there's a freedom. Now, Cardinal Ratzinger offered his own theological commentary, which in many ways, I believe, was diverse in emphasis than a commentary that had been released previously by Cardinal Sodano, actually while he was in Fatima. And so there is a openness to interpretation of this. I would like to at least give some parameters of what might help in giving a proper interpretation of this without pontificating what that interpretation should be. I think this element, this third secret, is so profound and important for our age that it merits each of us taking time, bringing this message before the Blessed Sacrament. I'm not kidding here. I think this is something very important. I really encourage you to do this, Get it off the internet. Just put Third Secret of Fatima. You can Google it. It's all over the place. Take it before the Blessed Sacrament. Pray before our Eucharistic Jesus and ask Him to send the Holy Spirit and ask for Our Lady's assistance to interpret this in a way that would be pleasing to Him. A couple parameters for that interpretation. First of all, the nature of prophecy. Remember, the nature of prophecy is where God reveals some future event to help with conversion, to help people spiritually prepare, to allow individuals a foreknowledge for the sake of souls. That's what's the ironclad clarity regarding the purpose of prophecy. What is not the purpose of prophecy, and what is not the reason why God reveals things, is simply to create stirs, to have hysteria, or we would even say the reason the church releases these things is not to satisfy human curiosity. So, when we're looking at that in terms of this Third Secret of Fatima, we have to remember the following. Number one, in 1960, Blessed John the 23rd saw the Third Secret. He said, "It's not for my time." And he put it back into the secret Vatican archives. John Paul II read the Third Secret and said, "I release it now. I release it for this time." So John Paul II already gives us an idea that there's something very relevant about the Third Secret now. Secondly, Sister Lucia of Fatima clearly identified the bishop in white as the person of John Paul II. And that brings a whole new dimension, I think, into the relevance of this secret. So, John Paul II. Now, John Paul II, traveling through a big city, half in ruins and half trembling with halting step. Was that the John Paul II that was shot in 1981? Some have the idea that there's nothing regarding the Third Secret of Fatima that it pertains to the future. It's all just past history. That this whole secret is exclusively referring to the attack on the church by, for example, the communist regime and the martyrs that were offered up during those times, the blood that was spilled at that time. That would be difficult, I think, for a fully authentic, or at least a logical interpretation, in light of the fact that the John Paul II that was shot in 1981 was a dynamic, a mountain-climbing John Paul II. He was not a pope half trembling with halting step. But John Paul was that pope during the later years of his pontificate. So, but what we know with clarity is, number one, prophecy has a meaning. It's not just for curiosity. It has something to help conversion. Number two, that John Paul II was identified as this individual. Number three, Cardinal Ratzinger speaks about the relevance of the Fatima message for our age. He alludes to the fact that even with things like a nuclear disaster, many of the elements that were revealed in the July 13th, 1917 message could be something that humanity could face. So, in regards to what could be, let's say, for lack of a better term, interpretation A or interpretation B. Interpretation A, let's say, is simply saying the Third Secret, which I just read to you, only refers to the past. It's only a reference to things the church has already entirely endured and survived. That would be, I think, challenging based on the nature of prophecy. Then the question would be, why would have not John the 23rd, saintly pope, not just saintly, I mean, he's a blessed, he's incorrupt in St. Peter's, I mean, really extraordinarily saintly pope. Why would he have not released this secret at time, saying it's not for this time? I think that's a fair question. So A is, it's all about the past. B is, no, while there's complexity to this, there are still elements that pertain to our time and perhaps the future. And let me leave you with this thought. In 1999, Sister Lucia gave an interview to John Hafford, the founder of the Blue Army. And Sister Lucia said, we're presently in the third day of the week of Fatima. The interviewer said, well, what do you mean by that? And he said, well, and Sister Lucia said, the first day or historical period was the period of the apparitions themselves. The second day or historical period was post-apparition, pre-consecration. She said, now that John Paul II has made the consecration, which she confirms was made by John Paul II, now we're in the post-apparition period, post-consecration period. She said, but there's still 4 more days to the week of Fatima. Now, I think that too merits an examination. More to come. More to come in the passion, death, and resurrection of the Church, which will lead to an era of peace. Part of that and more, I think, is also the proclamation of the Fifth Marian Dogma. Get the Third Secret of Fatima, pray about it, bring it before the Blessed Sacrament. Let it inspire our hearts to be more generous in rosary, consecration, First Saturdays, daily Mass, and doing our part for the triumph of the Immaculate Heart. Mark Miravalle for Marycast. God bless.